So most Americans don't know that there's two Toyota Land Cruisers. Yes, the Toyota Land Cruiser is actually two different vehicles. And today we're going to talk about the two Toyota Land Cruisers. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. So there's two Toyota Land Cruisers. Most Americans don't know this, or they're kind of confused about the two different Land Cruisers. Now, the best way we can wrap our heads around this concept of two Toyota Land Cruisers is, first, what are they? Well, there's the Toyota Land Cruiser that everybody here in America knows is the Toyota Land Cruiser. It was just discontinued this year, but prior to this year, it's been sold in America forever. It's the Toyota Land Cruiser. You already know its rep. It's a great off-roading vehicle. However, some years back, a few decades ago, Toyota made a second Land Cruiser known as the Toyota Land Cruiser Prado in the world market. And essentially, it's a short base Toyota Land Cruiser. So you have a long wheelbase Toyota Land Cruiser and a short wheelbase Land Cruiser. Now, here's the easiest way to wrap your head around this concept. If you remember, Jeep a few years ago, well, not a few years ago, a few decades ago, came out with the long wheelbase Jeep Wrangler. Prior to that, in other words, back in the day, which really maybe 20, 25 years ago, you could only get the short wheelbase Jeep. That's the Jeep with the two doors instead of the one with the four doors. So you have two Jeep Wranglers. You got the short wheelbase Wrangler, and you've got the long wheelbase Wrangler with the four doors. Both are Jeep Wranglers. Now, the Land Cruiser Prado, sold overseas as the Land Cruiser Prado, is a Land Cruiser. And then the full-size Land Cruiser is also a Land Cruiser. Like the Jeep Wrangler, one is a short wheelbase, one is a long wheelbase. They're both in what Toyota considers to be the Land Cruiser family. The Land Cruiser is proudly stamped on both the Land Cruiser Prado and the full-size Land Cruiser when they come out of their factory in Japan. So, a lot of questions arise about these two Land Cruisers. First of all, is it in America? And the answer is yes. This is it right here. It's the Lexus GX460. Prior to this, it was the Lexus GX470. Both are simply rebadged Toyota Land Cruiser Prados. Now, interestingly, when they first came out as the Lexus GX470, the fourth gen Toyota 4Runner was also, in its V8 form, a Land Cruiser Prado as well. So that fourth gen, some of those fourth gen Toyota 4Runners were also Land Cruiser Prados. Now let's answer some questions, and the biggest question is always, is it a real Land Cruiser? And the answer is yes. Toyota considers Land Cruiser to be not a particular model, but a family, now two, just like there's two Jeep Wranglers. And they consider the Land Cruiser to be a feature experience. In other words, what Toyota means by Land Cruiser is it's feature packed. It has all the off-road goodies that Toyota considers to be state-of-the-art at the time. Most notably, when it comes to the Land Cruiser, either the Prado or the full-size Land Cruiser, it's going to be a third differential known as the center differential, which allows you to have full-time four-wheel drive. Not slip and grip four-wheel drive, not viscous limited coupling four-wheel drive, but true full-time four-wheel drive with a third center Torsen C-type center differential. That's what the Land Cruiser Prado has, or this Lexus GX460, and that's what the full-size Land Cruiser or the LX570 or the LX600 has, that center differential. And that's also what that fourth gen V8 Toyota 4Runner had. It had a center differential for full-time four-wheel drive. So, unbeknownst to most Americans, you have this magical opportunity to get this baby Land Cruiser, this short wheelbase Land Cruiser. Now, why did Toyota make two Land Cruisers to begin with? Simple. In some parts of the world, they want to off-road in a big, long wheelbase car. Most notably, the African nations and the Middle East. They like that big full-size Land Cruiser. Their idea of off-roading is these vast landscapes and desertscapes flying across the desert, and they can have a big vehicle. But in other parts of the world, such as Australia parts of Asia and here in America, what we consider off-roading is a lot of narrow trails and rock climbing and narrow passages and canyons and things like that, not wide open spaces per se. There's going to be trees, there's going to be bushes, there's going to be rocks in the way. And this is why you want a short wheelbase. So Toyota realized that there were two markets, much like Jeep and their Jeep Wrangler realized that some people wanted a four-door, longer wheelbase Wrangler for the type of off-roading they wanted to do, and some people wanted that old-school short wheelbase Wrangler with two doors for the type of off-roading they wanted to do. So, like Jeep, Toyota wisely decided to make two LandCruisers. So they're two legit LandCruisers. So it's important to note that the Prado, and this is what most people are going to say and be confused about, that it's not a real Land Cruiser, it's a fancy 4Runner, or it's not in the same DNA as a Land Cruiser, all this stuff. The first thing to realize about Toyota is it doesn't matter whether you're getting a Corolla or a Land Cruiser, as far as reliability is concerned, there's no class differentiation. In other words, Toyota is going to have the same reliability whether you get a Corolla or a Land Cruiser. So reliability is not an issue. Corolla, 4Runner, Sequoia, it's all going to be built up to a Land Cruiser reliability standards. Toyota does not pick and choose which class of vehicles they make reliable. They all use the same top-tier world-class parts for all of their vehicles. So reliability is not a concern. The only question then is, what are the features? What makes this truly a Land Cruiser? And that's all the things I mentioned. Feature pack, the Land Cruiser experience, the center differential, the KDSS. Some of them have adjustable shocks. Yes, there's some luxury here and there thrown in there, but it's really not, it's really marginal differences that make a Land Cruiser a Land Cruiser. They're just the absolute top tier of the latest off-road stuff at the time. And rest assured that this GX 460 has it, the new LX 600 has it, the current Land Cruiser 300 series that's available in the world market has it, and the coming Land Cruiser Prado, the next generation of this, will have the top tier stuff. But as it stands right now, you can get a Land Cruiser Prado at a great price here in this country and get all the Land Cruiser stuff in a smaller package. Again, think of that 4-door Jeep versus the 2-door Jeep. They're both Jeeps. Yeah, even the Jeeps have different engines. Some have 4 cylinders, some have 8 cylinders, some have 6 cylinders. Some of the Jeep Wranglers now are electric, right? They got that electric version or hybrid version, but they're still full-on legit Jeep Wranglers. That's what this Land Cruiser Prado / GX 460 is. Okay, so they have it all.
And if you're still not convinced that this thing is a Land Cruiser, over in Europe, that means the entire continent of Europe with its 50-some countries, what we get here in America as the Lexus GX 460 is sold in Europe as simply the Toyota Land Cruiser. It doesn't even say Land Cruiser Prado. It's not known as the Prado over in Europe. It's known as the Toyota Land Cruiser or the Land Cruiser. And as you can see in these pictures on the rear, it just says Land Cruiser. So that should remove any doubt that your Lexus GX 460 is indeed the Land Cruiser or a short wheelbase Land Cruiser.
Now this conversation wouldn't be complete without someone is always going to say, well, is it really a Land Cruiser? It doesn't have lockers. In other words, it doesn't have locking differentials. And to that I say, neither does the Land Cruiser. For the past over 20 years, the full-on big-size Land Cruiser for about 22 years has not had traditional locking differentials. Why? Because Toyota put on the wonderful, phenomenal A-Track system, which is essentially a locking simulation that works phenomenal. They put that A-Track system on their big boy flagship Land Cruiser over 22 years ago. They got rid of the mechanical locking differentials because they consider A-Track to be their top-tier flagship off-road locker type of thing. They also have A-Track on the GX 460 and most Toyota 4Runners. So there's no argument with lockers because lockers haven't even been on the Land Cruiser for over 2 decades. Why? Because they've tested A-Track, we've tested A-Track, and A-Track simply works. In fact, when I was looking up information on this before we got this GX460, and people were saying it's a Land Cruiser product, and I said, really, is it? Does it have lockers? Blah, blah, blah. And I couldn't find a lot of information if this 8-track system worked as good as lockers. But after a lot of research, I finally found one guy in Australia, a man in Australia, had tons of off-roading experience, and he had the old original Land Cruisers. He was probably in his 50s or 60s, and he assured everybody in his video that based on his experience, it is the same, if not better, as lockers, and that's exactly what we found. 8-track is not a Mickey Mouse system. It's not a good enough system. It is not a soft system. It is not a weak system. It is not a hesitant system. It is not an apprehensive system. It is a hardcore locker simulation that, in my opinion, works better than traditional lockers. Toyota, I think, agrees too, because 22 years ago, they dropped it from their full-size Land Cruiser. Now, a lot of people say, well, in some markets, they still put a rear locker on some of their Toyotas. Yes, that's for marketing purposes because, as I just mentioned, a lot of people have a psychological trouble undoing what great-granddad said about you need lockers to go off-road. So there's a little bit of cultural and, shall we say, a cultural learning curve when it comes to 8-track replacing lockers. But let that speak for itself, what I said. In America, there's been no lockers on Toyota Land Cruisers for over 20 years. 8-track is simply absolutely amazing and phenomenal. So you've got a wonderful opportunity to pick up a real deal baby Land Cruiser or short wheelbase, just like your short wheelbase Wrangler and your long wheelbase Wrangler. You got an opportunity to pick that up and getting a Lexus GX460. Yes, it's the real deal. They come off the same factories in Toyota as the regular Land Cruiser. If you peel away the plastic on this, it's actually stamped Toyota and Land Cruiser in multiple places all over the vehicle. It is the real deal. If you found this video helpful, please remember to like and subscribe. Thank you and have a great, great day.
From the century of the cool cat, deep down with the clean of the hot hat, lift up face, and then they knocking on my door. I've been feeling the boom, this is what it after 4. So what's it was that for? Was really just for your break out the sword and let's go cruising in your Ford. Watch out, yeah, sweet snow is the deal. As she shouted, it's the funky lesson 1 to the grill. I should have known that something wasn't right in walking. The biggity boom was just ticking and clocking. A nice boy in plaid is passed from his dad. Another straight in the fight man, but he wasn't from the right clan. Stop all the nonsense, defense is my defense. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.